Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. What a development there has been. Is it really possible that Anthony Joshua will be fighting Tyson Fury in December? What? Where did this come from? Tyson Fury put out a tweet to say, yo, Anthony Joshua, what you saying, Big G? Let's give the fans what they want as Usyk is backing out, basically. I got the date and venue, who will rule Britannia. And Anthony Joshua gave a very measured, direct, and purposeful response. He wrote, yeah, calm. I don't do the online discussions just for clout. So if you're really about it, shout 258 management. I'll be ready in December. I love this tweet because he's saying, yeah, calm down. I know what you're like. You're doing it for clout. You're blatantly about that. I know, you're dangling this carrot in front of me that you have no intention of letting me take a bite out of because I'm in a place of mental anguish. I'm having to rebuild my career, and this is blatantly just you gaslighting the public again. But if you're really about that life, if you're genuinely brave, then you're not going to make a fight against Manuel Char or Ajit Kabayel. You're going to contact my management team and we're going to make it happen because I can be ready in December. So he's accepting the challenge while laying down the gauntlet for Fury. He's trying to back him into a corner. So I like both of these tweets here, what both of these two guys are doing. But is it just for clout? And is Fury just playing games like he likes to do? Or is it possible that this will happen? How did it come about, and what would be the wider ramifications for the division? Well, it first came about when Alexander Usyk came out and said that he would not be willing to fight Tyson Fury in December. And it's quite understandable, in my opinion, as to why he would say that. He did say that promoters and managers are talking in the hope of making the fight happen next year. And initially he was saying he's only interested in the Tyson Fury fight. He did say he would potentially be open to a trilogy with Anthony Joshua if the Fury fight cannot come about. But he's been very clear that that is the priority, and as long as Fury wants it, that fight will happen. However, he said there are two reasons that it's not possible to make the fight in December. First and foremost, I have old injuries that need to be treated. They made themselves known. Recovery will take a couple of months. Second, I just don't want to box in December. I haven't left the gym for half a year and I want to be with my children, my family. There are certain things to do at home. Boxing can wait a little. Next year, I think it will happen. To me, that's totally fair. This is a guy, remember, who is involved in back-to-back big fights all the time, chasing that greatness. He's done it all on the road. And so it's understandable that he also wants to spend some family time and let his body recover. This is a massive fight potentially for Alexander Usyk. If he was to beat Tyson Fury, you're talking about a man that became a world amateur gold medalist, an Olympic gold medalist, an undisputed cruiserweight champion, an undisputed heavyweight champion, all whilst doing it on the road and undefeated. I mean, what an unbelievable legacy. He's going to want to be in that fight at 100%. So if he's carrying any niggles, any injuries, he needs time, and I'm fine with that. I understand that. It could just be psychological too. He needs to, refresh himself after being in these back-to-back big fights. And you just know Tyson Fury has jumped at the opportunity to use this to insult Alexander Usyk, saying that he's afraid of him, he's trying to back out, that he's just a middleweight. But in the meantime, in the interim, if Tyson Fury is genuinely looking to fight Anthony Joshua, I've got to tip my hat off to him. Because what would this start to do? This would start to send him down the home stretch for his legacy. Because if he was to beat Anthony Joshua, then he was to beat Alexander Usyk in the spring or the summer, well, then you're talking about pretty much clocking the division. Yeah, there's always going to be another guy and so on and so forth. But in terms of the major players, if he would have taken out Wilder, AJ and Usyk, they were the major names of his day, including Vladimir Klitschko, who was the major name of the previous era. So you're talking about a legacy which would have been, well, I guess you could say complete. Like I said, you can always build. There's always someone else. You could potentially fight a star of the future. He might then want to go after someone like Dubois or Jared Anderson. But if he was to then stop after fighting AJ and Usyk, you'd have to give him his credit, his props, his dues. Well, Alexander Usyk, of course, is also seeking greatness, as we said, and he's been mocking Tyson Fury's attempts at trolling him. He put out a photo on Instagram of himself laughing and saying, when I saw the message from Tyson Fury. So clearly these two have begun the war of words. But is it possible that Tyson Fury could be fighting Anthony Joshua next? There is one potential obstacle, and that is Ajit Kabayel, an undefeated fighter who has a win over Derek Chisora, he put out a message on Instagram to say, Fury, you're a great champ and a great personality. You've done a lot for this sport. I respect you to the highest extent and have much respect for all your achievements and you as a person. You and your team know the contracts were signed. Our fight was set. I'm sure you've been in this situation wanting to get a chance fighting the biggest names. I was already mentally prepared for our fight. My current record is 22-0. I have not been defeated yet, just like you. Let's do this. Let's make a big event. I'm ready and prepared to deliver. Give me the chance, take the fight, and let's produce a great fight for the boxing world. Now, the fact that he's talking about contracts were signed, is this going to be another sort of Deontay Wilder situation where there's a legal element involved whereby Kabayel must fight Tyson Fury next? And if so, is that why Fury is essentially gaslighting potentially Anthony Joshua? Is he putting it out there to say, yeah, let's make this fight knowing that it can't happen, just a toy with AJ? Or if there is no such legal stipulation and Kabayel's just talking, we could start to see something pretty incredible from December. We could start to see the heavyweight division really set alight. Now, in terms of legacy, like I said, Tyson Fury has a lot to gain. So does Alexander Usyk. In terms of Anthony Joshua, he has the opportunity to catapult himself back into the limelight instantly. And I know he lost to Alexander Usyk, but styles make fights. There are certain things that Usyk is very good at that Fury's not quite as good at, and there are certain things that Fury's exceptional at that again Alexander Usyk isn't quite as good at. So how these attributes marry up against Anthony Joshua's will remain to be seen on the night. But AJ will be a real threat to Tyson Fury. There's no doubt about that. And if AJ was able to win that fight, it would potentially then make a trilogy with Alexander Usyk a lot more interesting. AJ will be high on confidence. He will say that he's learned from those Usyk defeats. He's improved as a fighter, hence why he's able to beat the likes of Tyson Fury now. And all of a sudden, it makes that third fight a lot more interesting. Whereas if it was to happen next, the way that Usyk is suggesting could be possible, it doesn't have that same interest, right? By the same token, if Fury does a number on AJ, if he beats him, we're going to start to compare and contrast the performances between Fury against AJ and Usyk against AJ. You see what I'm saying? So that will add more spice to the Usyk fight. If this was to happen instead of Alexander Usyk, or if there was to be a rematch clause in a Fury versus AJ fight, then a lot of people will feel as though Tyson Fury has ducked Alexander Usyk. They'll see it as a case of this dude had an injury, he wanted to recover from the injury, he wanted a bit of time with his family. Instead of December, he wanted the fight, say, in March, April, May, something like that, and Fury clearly didn't want it and found the excuse. If it was to happen instead of the Usyk fight, I would be one of those people that would be very critical of Tyson Fury. But if it happens as a keep busy fight, Fury AJ, a fight in the interim in preparation for another big fight, just to start to solidify that legacy, wow, man, you've got to tip your hat off to Tyson Fury. And if he does it, he's going to sail off into the sunset like a boss if he was to beat both of these two guys. And nobody would be able to criticize him when he turns around and says, I'm the best of all time. You might not necessarily agree when he does, because like I've said before, it's more of a conversation. It's a bracket of fighters. And everyone's going to be able to make their case about a different fighter and their favorites and so on and so forth. But you have a group of guys that are in that conversation. Tyson Fury will catapult himself into that conversation if he was to beat both AJ and Usyk, in the same way that if Usyk was to beat him, he catapults himself into that situation too. So what a terrific circumstance that we're seeing develop potentially. I'd be very happy to see it happen in December, but honestly, if I was an advisor of Tyson Fury, I'd rather he'd fight Kabayel, an undefeated fighter, but it carries less risk than fighting Anthony Joshua ahead of an undisputed title fight, which is what it's all really about. If you become undisputed, you write your name down in the annals of time, in the history books of the sport. No one can ever take it away from you. After that, you also fight Anthony Joshua and you secure the legacy in its entirety. But this is all the more reason that we have to give him major props if he was to take a risk by fighting AJ now ahead of the undisputed title fight. If he then also goes on to fight Alexander Usyk after that, you'd have to really tip your hat off to Tyson Fury. Let me know what you think about all this. Where do these guys go from here? Anthony Joshua, could he potentially upset the apple cart here and throw everything into disarray and then want a third fight against Alexander Usyk? Would you give him more of a chance coming off of the learning curve he's already had and then the confidence boost of potentially beating Tyson Fury? Or is this all just claptrap and we're wasting our times and we're going to see him fight Manuel Charr or Ajit Kabayel next? Let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Take care. God bless.